Okay, welcome everybody. It's Saturday afternoon. Normally this would be a time when I might be producing a chronicle for the Geezerville Chronicles, which is the title and label of my YouTube channel. But I'm not going to do that today. Consider this kind of like a special edition. And I want to share it with my friends. It's going to be a bit of a shocker, I think. But I think it's something that I feel compelled to do, and I'm going to do it. It's not rehearsed, and of course, occasionally I might look at a few notes I've made because I don't want to forget any of the topics. Now, when I start a chronicle, I sit back and I tell my audience, I'm not here to waste your time, and I give them sort of a capsulized view of what they're going to see if they continue through the end of the video that I make. And my videos normally take 20 to 30 minutes to finish. And so I want to make sure people know that's what they want to buy into, because usually there's a punchline at the end, and I try to get them to go there. But this is not that kind of thing, and I quite frankly don't know how long this is going to take, but damn it, I'm going to do it. Now, I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about what happened in the last 10 days, specifically after April 2nd, which is called Liberation Day by the current governing administration in the United States. And the second thing I'm going to talk about is something many of you don't know anything about because you haven't been exposed to it. And it's called Guanzi. And I think it's really essential that you know about that concept. Now, the third thing is going to be education in China. And I want to dispel a myth that I'm sure exists in the minds of most Americans who haven't been to Asia, and that's the bulk of most of America. And I'm going to lay out some hopefully shocking information, and that will bring you to a sense of understanding as to why I felt compelled to do this today. Okay, so let's get started on the first one. The first one is about the upheaval in the global trading markets. I don't just mean financial. I mean all the ramifications around the world of what our administration unilaterally decided to do, which was to engage in something called reciprocal tariffs. Excuse me for the blunder. That calls for a small sip of water. But I'm going to really not talk in detail about that because there's a better source of information. And I think it's really important. And I spent some digging because I knew this was going to happen. When a crisis occurs in Singapore, where I'm very familiar with, I've lived there for just about 4 years now, or 4 years in my past career. Every year, the Prime Minister meets with all the people, and at least once a year. During a crisis, it can be every day, every 24 hours, or whatever, and they go on television and they talk directly to the people. Well, the current Prime Minister Wong made an address last week. I believe it was on Wednesday. And you need to hear about it. Now, I had to do some digging to find it, but there's a YouTube link in the summary of this video that you'll find. Unfortunately, I've looked at it, and there's some pop-up commercials that come up in the middle of it. So you're going to have to skip through those as they pop up. But please do spend the 20 minutes. It's worth it. It's worth it to you to get some perspective. And I don't care where you are politically. It's important to understand this information. Now, having said that, I want to just say that unilaterally what we have done is just blown apart a rules-based global trading system. We call it the World Trade Organization, the WTO. And in spite of all its shortcomings, and some people feeling at times that it didn't work in their best interest, it's been a logical way to go about nations that have most favored nation status to treat each other in terms of global trade. It's a rules-based system. Well, we just blew that apart. And sort of like what we ended up doing, blowing apart, was our reputation around the globe, which largely was based on trust. And anybody that's run a business, and not a pseudo business, knows that it takes decades to build a reputation and to build credibility and trust. And it takes seconds to repair it. And what you'll see Prime Minister Wong do is very succinctly lay out what just happened on April 2nd. It's kind of ironic. It's the day after April Fool's Day. Maybe some of that carried over into the 2nd. I'm not sure. But in any case, think of what happened sort of like this egg. On one day in 24 hours, we took a trust, an element of trust, which say the world lived inside this egg. And what we did was we just broke it, just like that. And I got to clean this up later, but that's what we did. We broke it apart, and there's no getting it back. Go ahead and try to put those eggshells back together. It will take decades and a process to get that back. Now, don't take my word for it. Just listen to Prime Minister Wong, and then trust me on this point. The prime ministers in China and Europe, all throughout Asia, will all be doing what he's doing now in Singapore, which is preparing for a new future based on not reciprocity and trade, but it'll be one that's based on, and I'm going to go on something called unpredictable protectionism. That's what we've just done on April 2nd. Now, the markets are in chaos. Friday night, I think after midnight or whatever the rules were, our chief executive decided to grant exemptions from tariffs from some of our major high-tech companies. This will be seen as a wonderful thing on Monday morning. The stock markets will probably gyrate up. I'm at an age where I don't want to project because I don't have that long of a future. I'm about the same age, 1 year younger than our current president. So I'm not going to sit here and give you stock market advice. I hope you'll really think about it though, because I bought my first stock when I was 14 years old. I've been in the markets ever since. This is the scariest thing I've ever seen, and it's not over. And trust me, it's not over. And I don't care if we get a rebound or not. Some people call those kind of rebounds in a bear market a dead cat bounce, and we're probably going to have a couple more of those down the road. It's going to be volatile. It's not something that one should take lightly. Okay, moving on from there, let's talk about Guanzi. What the hell does that mean? Well, you need to go back in history, like in China. China is a culture that's over 4,000 years old. And I did business extensively in Asia, in Japan, in South Korea, in Hong Kong, in mainland China, in Singapore, Australia, in Thailand, and Indonesia. I was chairman of the board of a company in China called Nelco Technologies in Zhuhai, China, which is just east of Hong Kong. And I was managing director of one of the largest operations that our parent company, which was incorporated in New York, had in Singapore. And I was also senior vice president in the parent company of Asian Business Unit Operations. Now, I'm not throwing all that crap out for you to say, oh my God, he really is something, isn't he? Well, that's not my motive at all. I was in the trenches. I lived there. I worked in the culture. I've done a lot of things to understand something called Guanzi. And what the hell is it? Well, it's a concept. Because the Chinese people and a lot of Asian people put a sacred nature around their family tree and their family history. If you violate a relationship or do something unethical, it impacts not only you as the doer, but your entire ancestry, and it puts them in jeopardy for the future, for forever. And because people don't trust government in China, they don't. I think the total population of communists in China is somewhere around the order of 8 to 10%. That's about it. They control over 1.3 billion people. But if you do business there, you quickly learn there's no such thing as China. There's an aggregation of a lot of Chinese provinces and areas. Sometimes the dialects are so different, people don't even understand from one to the other. But if you go to the eastern seaboard, it's much like a concentrated area in the United States. And there, the people are much more educated. They're essentially the working upper class in China. And they don't trust legal systems. So when you negotiate a contract and all your fancy Philadelphia lawyers, or in my case, New York lawyers, produce these 200-page contracts with all the garbage crap in them, nobody over there listens. Nobody over there cares. They only care about Guanzi, which is relationships. And those relationships take sometimes decades to build. And I can say that because I was a principal developer of a relationship which was not in China but in Japan. And it was a 10-year research agreement between a Fortune 500 US company and a large similar type company in Japan. And it was 10 years, and that's significant. And there's not been one, to my knowledge, since that time. And from my own personal experience, that takes a lot of effort. And here's my point. As far as I can tell from the public record, Trump has been in China one time, and that was at the invitation of the president in China, which is Xi Jinping. And he was there largely for a ceremonial visit, and they conducted a package of business that was worth X number of $1 billion during his visit, which is part of the ceremony and etc. that went on back in 2017. I can find no other visits to China between 2017 and before. I can find no records of any private visits, and before that 2017 era, I found no records of his ever being in Asia. So there may be, and it doesn't really matter, because my central point isn't that. My central point is that it takes decades to build relationships on a business level when you're dealing with anybody in China. Now, I'm going to look quickly at my notes here, because what Guanzi means is mutual obligations, trust building, and social capital, all rolled into one. In other words, if I do a favor for you and we shake hands on it, and that means I'm going to expect a favor from you. You've heard of those kind of systems, right? Well, that's what it amounts to. But the deal is different in the sense that if you break that promise, it's back to the ancestral thing. You don't do that, and you don't repair that damage lightly. And it's the old adage of, it takes decades to build a reputation and a brand, like the American brand around the world, and it takes seconds to destroy it. Well, you've just seen a really good example of that, and who knows what the outcome is going to be. I sure don't. But I do know that you don't do anything in negotiating with China. The art of the deal is nonsense. If you don't come into a negotiation as an American, if you don't come into that negotiation prepared, understanding culture, knowing that what you're driving for is not a zero-sum game, but a non-zero game where both people win. And the art is finding out the best win-win option. And to do that takes trust, and largely each party has to put up a vulnerability. That's a key point. If you don't show any vulnerability, that negotiation will go nowhere. So what we have done is just, for whatever reasons that are fabricated and for the public consumption, we have just destroyed our ability throughout Asia to do business for probably a decade, and until there's enough time for another administration to come into office and prove itself. And even if they say a lot of words, it will take another decade before any of that means anything. So that's what happened on our Liberation Day. And I say that with all due humility. I've lived with people in Asia. I highly respect them. I highly respect their capabilities. They're not enemies. They're very innovative. They have a different cultural mindset, which we can learn from. And the thing that I've learned over my lifetime is one of the most powerful tools that any leader or person in power can have is an advanced sense of culture-based learning, knowing about someone else's culture, respecting that culture, and being able to find where areas of agreement will provide Guanzi. So that's all for now on that topic. Let's go to the third topic, which is education. April 2nd struck a blow to education in America, because I don't think most Americans understand education and what it means throughout China. And I have direct knowledge of what education means in Singapore. And it's tremendously remarkable. And it's way past anything. That was when I was there in 2000. It's much more advanced than it was then. And they recruit the best people from all over the world for their universities. And education is one of their competitive advantages throughout Asia. But now let's get to China. There's something called, and I'm going to look back and forth at my notes here. There's something called China's Education Modernization Plan. It was a plan for 2035. Okay, it had three major purposes. It was accelerating the development of advanced research, encouraging high-level foreign university engineers into the programs in China, promoting professional postgraduate degrees from all over the world. Same thing in Singapore, but it was decades earlier. These things, and looking ahead, and I believe it was currently, what's the date I'm looking for here? Oh, just in 2024, they introduced undergraduate majors in the following fields: high-powered semiconductor science and engineering, number one, intelligent ocean equipment development, electronic information materials, which includes everything in the semiconductor area. They introduced plant breeding technologies for agricultural productivity. They introduced ecological restoration programs. They introduced national security studies, etc., etc. And it goes on. That was just in 2024. But these are strategic. They're funded. They're capable. They have more PhDs graduated in I think 2020. They turned over, I think the year was 2019, when their number of PhDs from China outpaced the US, and now it's going to be double in 2024. I think the official statistics are out. It will double if it hasn't already. And we have, what is our plan? What is our plan in the United States of America, the richest country in the world? What in the hell is our plan? And what are we doing to education? You know, seriously, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. Do you want to give up the damn game before it starts? Think about that. Okay, on to the next thing. This has to do with a little story, just how deep this goes with regard to education. That's the topic I'm still on. I remember meeting with the ministers at the time I was there in the year 2000. I think it was more precisely 2003 that I met with one of the ministers in the Singaporean government at that time, a really eloquent individual. And the government at that time in Singapore faced a challenge. They had they were, for a long time, the chief producers of electronic circuits and circuit boards for computers back in that era, and all of a sudden it started to migrate out and it went to China and places like where Tim Cook does business and Shenzhen and places where Foxconn operates. I've been in those facilities. And if we think we can bring those kind of facilities over to the United States and drop them in, we don't have the talent and we don't have the workers to even come close to operating them. And we won't have for at least half a decade if we started training tomorrow. Believe me. So getting back to Singapore. So they saw this challenge. It was all going out back in 2005, right? So what did they do? They said, well, our asset, we've developed all these clean rooms for all these electronic products that we've been producing around the world. What the hell are we going to do with them, right? So they decided that they were going to launch a new materials development capability to develop new to the world materials. And they were going to also develop biochemical capabilities to produce new drugs and other kinds of resources, right? And pharmaceutical. So they wanted to really do a deep dive into biochemistry, but they didn't have the expertise. So how did they solve that problem? Well, they went around the world and they asked leading researchers from the UK to the United States, all around the world, Stanford, Cambridge, all the major players, and they essentially built labs. And like the Field of Dreams, build the labs and they will come. Well, they built the labs all right, but they also were clever. And they figured out the one thing that all of those researchers needed were genetically pure strains of rats to be able to fast track their research. So they went underground. Singapore is a city-state, an island. Drive across it in an hour and a half, and less than that actually if there's no traffic. And so they built these underground colonies of rats. And that sounds crazy to probably all of you listening here, but if you really understand what motivates a researcher in the field of biochemistry and all the stuff that they had to do, it's, you do studies on these kind of things with rats, and they have to be genetically pure to compare any kind of gene modifications or drug or drug-induced cures to different diseases, right? So they put that resource in place, and then they were able to recruit from around the world expertise. And it's sort of like the Germans in World War II, right? They didn't start with the first British ship that was ever produced. They went to the best British ship, copied the design, and then pushed their technology forward. That's what's going on in Asia, in spades. In spades. And so I know this has been a long video, and the thing that drives me to make it is not fist pounding. I'm not trying to slam the United States. I love my country. I love what we've evolved. I love our spirit of entrepreneurship, and I love the best of education. I'm just confounded, and I have been, that we've been so unable to provide resources to the greater population that we have, to bring everybody to a level of competency. In Singapore, 96% of the population have gone through one track or another of an equivalent of college education. 96%. Now, if you want to field a baseball team, you don't go at it with amateurs. The game is still a game, but you need to have a bench. And let me tell you, we're facing teams now that have benches that make us look like a ship of fools. And our ability to continue, is really dependent on our ability to attract people to want to come to the United States, want to study in our universities, want to to learn in an environment where it's free and you can speak your mind and do things creatively and think outside the box. That's what they want. So what did we just do? What did we just do? I mean, if I were a person with any kind of brain at all, and I lived outside this country, what is it going to take me to trust in the United States of America? I leave you with that question. What have we just done? I normally say, I hope you have a great day. But this isn't a great day in America. This isn't a Liberation Day. This is a day to take stock. And this is a day to stand up and speak your mind. Thanks for your time.